Welcome to week 6, the final week of our Part 107 prep series. You've already covered the hardest building blocks: the core rules, airspace, sectional charts, weather performance, and safety decision making. Now it's time to bring all of that together and learn how to actually think through the Part 107 test itself so you can walk in and pass smarter, not just harder. Let's finish strong. Here's how the final week breaks down. Lesson 11 is our FAA-Style review session. We're going to cover how to read questions properly, how to eliminate wrong answers, and how to avoid the costly mistake that trips students up on test day. Lesson 12 is your final practice exam plus test day readiness. We'll talk mindset, pacing, and building the confidence you need walking into the real exam. By the end of this week, you're not just going to know the material, you're going to know how to perform on the test itself. Let's reframe something important before we go any further. The Part 107 knowledge test is not just checking your memory, it's checking whether you can recognize the rule, read the scenario, understand what the FAA is actually asking, and then choose the safest, most correct answer. In other words, this is not only a memorization test, it's a decision making test. Here's a simple equation to keep in your head as you study: rule plus scenario plus decision equals the correct answer. If you're only working on the rule part of that equation, you're leaving the other 2/3 of the test unprepared for. Let's build a strategy you can apply to every single question on the exam, so you avoid rushing and picking an answer that just looks familiar instead of one that's actually correct. Step 1. Read slowly. Read the full question before you even look at the answer choices. Step 2. Identify the topic. Name the subject out loud in your head, whether it's airspace, weather, altitude, or general rules. Step 3. Look for clues. Keywords in the wording almost always point you towards the correct rule. Step 4. Eliminate wrong answers. Remove anything that's unsafe, illegal, or unrelated to what's being asked. And step 5. Choose the best answer, the one that fits the situation, not just one keyword that caught your eye. 5 steps, every question, no exceptions. Here's a shortcut that will save you on time on test day. Identify the question type before you try to solve it. The moment you name the topic, you activate the right rule in your brain instead of searching blindly. An airspace question usually has keywords like airspace classes, shelf, authorization, airport, or chart symbols. A weather question will use words like wind, visibility, ceiling, METAR, TAF, or dew point. An altitude or performance question often mentions tower, structure, altitude, AGL, or MSL. And a rules or safety question typically references remote PIC, visual observer, pre-flight, or careless operation. Train yourself to scan for these keywords first. It turns a vague, intimidating question into a clearly labeled one. Let's cover 3 mistakes that quietly cost students points. Mistake number 1, rushing. Students read half the question and answer too quickly, missing critical context that was sitting right there in the second half of the sentence. Mistake number 2, missing a keyword. Words like not, except, most, best, or prior can completely flip the correct answer. Skim past one of those words and you confidently pick the wrong choice. And mistake number 3, ignoring the supplement. If the question gives you a chart, a weather code, or a diagram, use it. Don't try to answer from memory when the tool you need is sitting right there on the screen. Even when you're not 100% sure of the right answer, you can usually eliminate 1 or 2 wrong ones immediately, and that alone dramatically improves your odds. Ask yourself 4 questions about each answer choice. Does this answer sound unsafe? Does it break a known Part 107 rule? Does it ignore the chart or weather data you were given? And is it actually answering a different question than the one being asked? Eliminate anything that's unsafe, illegal, or unrelated, and you'll often find yourself choosing between 2 reasonable options instead of 4 confusing ones. Let's walk through 3 example question types using the strategy we just built. Airspace example. The question asks about authorization near an airport. Identify it as an airspace question. Find the location on the chart, determine whether it's controlled or uncontrolled, then answer. Weather example. The question gives you a METAR and asks whether conditions support a safe flight. Identify it as a weather question. Read the wind, visibility, and cloud ceiling carefully. Then choose your answer. Altitude example. The question asks how high a drone may fly near a structure. Think back to the 400 feet above structure rule and pay close attention to whether the question is asking for AGL or MSL. Notice the pattern across all three. Identify the type first, then apply the specific knowledge to that question. Before you move forward, let's run through a checklist of what you should be able to confirm at this point in your studies. Can you state the major Part 107 rules? Can you identify basic airspace classes and read sectional chart symbols? Can you decode simple METARs, TAFs, and cloud clearance concepts? Do you understand how altitude instructors affect drone limits? And can you slow down and work through a question without panicking? If you can confidently check off all 5 of these, you're in great shape heading toward the final practice exam. Let's pause for a quick check before we move into Lesson 12. Question 1. What should you do before choosing the answer on a chart question? Question 2. Why is eliminating wrong answers so useful even when you're unsure of the correct one? Question 3. What are the common keywords that can change the meaning of a question? And question 4. What should you do if the question includes a figure or supplement image? Here are your key reminders to carry forward. Slow down, identify the topic, and use the figure. Those 3 habits alone will fix the majority of test mistakes students make. Welcome to Lesson 12, your final practice exam and test day readiness lesson. Here's something worth remembering. The difference between passing and failing this exam is often not intelligence, it's preparation, pacing, and mindset. In this lesson, we're going to cover how to use a final practice exam the right way and exactly what to do in the days leading up to test day. This is the lesson that ties everything together. Let's talk about the purpose of a final exam because a lot of students misuse it. A mock exam is not just about getting a score to feel bad or good about. It's about finding your weak areas before the real test does it for you. Use your mock exam to answer 3 critical questions. What topics do I know well? What topics still slow me down? And what mistakes am I making under pressure? Here's the way to think about it. A mock exam exists to find your weak spots before the real test, not to be a final verdict on whether you're ready. Here's the real secret. The value of a practice test isn't the score. It's the review afterward. Once you've taken your mock exam, sort every missed question into 1 of 5 categories. Didn't know the rule? Go back and restudy that specific Part 107 regulation. Misread the question? Practice slowing down and watching for trap words like not or except. Forget how to use a chart? Review sectional chart symbols and practice with figures again. Confused by weather codes? Re-review your METAR and TAF decoding basics. And change your answer and made it worse. In that case, the lesson is to trust your first instinct unless you have a clear, specific reason to change it. Sorting your mistake this way turns a practice test from a number into an actual study plan. If your exam date is close, here's the most important advice in this entire lesson. Do not try to learn everything from scratch. Cramming creates confusion. Focused review builds confidence, and that distinction matters more than most students realize. Here's how to spend those final 48 hours. Review key rules. Focus on the most tested Part 107 regulations, not the obscure edge cases. Review chart symbols. Refresh your sectional chart reading skills one more time. Review weather basics. METAR, TAF, visibility, and cloud clearance. Review your most missed question types. Go straight at the weak spots you identified from your mock exam. And finally, get proper rest. Sleep is a performance tool, not a luxury. Don't skip it the night before your exam. Let's talk about the mindset you want walking into the test center. Here's the internal script I want you to run. I do not need to be perfect. I need to read carefully. I need to stay calm. I need to use the tools provided, and I need to work one question at a time. Why does mindset matter this much? Because anxiety causes rushing, and rushing causes mistakes. Here's something worth remembering: the student who's passed aren't always the most knowledgeable people in the room, they're the most focused and deliberate. One question at a time, that's the whole secret. Let's lock in a concrete test day strategy. Make sure you read fully, read every question completely. Watch for traps, look for words like not, except, and best. Use the figures. Be sure to consult the supplemental figures. And mark and move. Flag hard items and continue. Return calm. Last but not least, come back with a clearer mind. Let's take a moment for some honest reassurance before we move into the final checklist. If you studied the rules, practiced the charts, reviewed the weather, and taken a mock exam, you are not walking into that testing center empty handed. You are walking in prepared. And here's something important to accept ahead of time: you may not know every single question, and that's okay. What actually matters is that you know how to think through the test using the strategy, the elimination process, and the mindset we've built across the entire series. Prepared beats perfect every time. Let's run through one final honest self check before test day. Can you identify the main topic of a question quickly? Can you use a sectional chart without panicking? Can you decode basic METAR and TAF information? Can you spot unsafe or illegal answer choices? And can you stay calm when a question looks unfamiliar? Answer these honestly to yourself. If you can say yes to most of them, you are in a genuinely strong position heading into the exam. Before we close out this series, I want to leave you with this. You do not have to be the smartest person in the room to pass this test. You need to be focused, prepared, and willing to slow down and think clearly when it counts. That is how students actually pass. Not by panic, not by guessing, but by preparation and good decision making. Exactly like we've practiced together over these 6 weeks. So, with all that being said, congratulations on completing the full Part 107 Prep series. That's a real accomplishment, and you should be proud of the work that you put in to get here. You've completed all 6 weeks of Part 107 Prep. Now take what you learned, review your weak spots, stay calm, and go past your test.